ladies and gentlemen, and welcome along to another episode of EOTT with me, Jimmy James.
And today, I'm happy to say we have David Robinson along to chat with us of the Practicing Lawful Dissent. Good afternoon, David. How are you, brother?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to have a talk about this.
No problem at all. My pleasure. And I'm thankful to you, I should say, for giving me the opportunity and the listeners to get right into the nitty-gritty of this, David, because it's quite a complex subject, as obviously you know, and I'm sure people come to find, but it's not too complex that we can't come to an understanding of it, you know. David and I have been digital comrades, as I like to call it, Facebook friends for a couple of years now, and I've been following with interest his page, Practicing Lawful Dissent. I won't get into it, David. I'll leave it to the master. So if you'd be so kind, sir, tell us a little bit about yourself, David, for the listeners, and how you came to come to where you are right now, if you'd be so kind.
Okay. Well, I didn't understand what was going on with the European Union as I do today. Before I met a lady named Elizabeth Beckett. Now, the UK column did a spread on her, so did Sanity, a magazine, the Master magazine, I think it was. So you can see what she was like, the first council tax protester, because she said it was unconstitutional. So I met her in about mid-1990s, and she became my mentor for about 2 years. At first I thought she was a bit balmy, you know, but she had certain documents like the Treaty of Rome, the Treaty of Accession into the European Union, and whatnot. So she could actually say, well, there it is. And so she won me over by showing me the proof of the matter. So that's how I got into it, really, Jimmy. I mean, there's an awful lot I could go into that, but it's probably a bit besides the point.
Okay.
That's how I got into it. I met some very interesting people like Norris McWhirter and Rodney Atkinson and John Gurrier and a few others that were active at the time. Against the they were informing the farmers of what's going on with the European Union because they were getting quite distressed at the time. So what I got out of Elizabeth was an understanding of the main objective, which was for us to lose our sovereignty and to be under a despotic rule, which is what we can all see is going on today.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Interesting. As you said, we mentioned we were chatting a little bit before we kind of started recording, and you know, nobody's born into any of this stuff, David. We're kind of born in, you know, we go to school, and then, you know, at some point or another, for a lot of us, it gets to the point where we kind of start looking around and thinking, hang on a minute, like, what is actually going on here? And it's kind of a case of our parents lied to us, not intentionally, of course,
No.
because their grandparents lied to them, again, unintentionally, because there's just been this kind of, this agenda of control, societal control, has kept a lot of us in the dark. But as we come into this age of information now, where, as I always say, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, and you can choose to not look. If that's up to you, that's absolutely fine. But for people like us, and I'm sure for a lot of the listeners, you know, we want to know what's going on. So where did you progress then from there, David, to kind of get to where you are now?
I just want to make a quick point there from that.
Of course, yeah, please.
Harold Wilson stopped teaching constitutional law in the universities in the 1950s and 60s, and in schools as well. So this is why we've been miseducated. So that's quite an important point, really, because the dumbing down has been going on for a very long time, and we will probably get into this a bit later because it's a longer agenda than most people are aware of. So what I did after finding out that I had a duty under the law to do something, and bear in mind that the Barons petition to the monarch in 2001, which we'll get into later, by the way, I'm sure, hadn't been invoked at this time. So I went on to educate myself for a couple more years. And then I had a lot of stick from the system because I produced a CD, which is all about European Union, just 4 tracks on it. And some of the lyrics were quite anti-establishment, shall we say.
Oh, you're naughty boy, David, naughty boy.
I sent one to Blair and to Kinnock and stuff, and I got investigated, shall we say, by security enforcers, which actually made me realise how serious this matter is. You know, so it brought me into a better awareness. You know, because for about a month I was followed around by about 3 or 4 different vehicles, and I got wise to this, and I took them for joyrides and stuff. But basically, we won't go into any of that because it's unimportant. It's just it woke me up to the gravity.
But an interesting point to make.
Again? Yeah, thank you. So what
I was just saying it is an aside, but nevertheless, go on.
Well, what happened was I lost contact with Elizabeth Beckett.
Sorry, I interrupted you there, David. Go on.
Oh, so I lost contact with Elizabeth Beckett because she got bankrupted by the system because she had too much faith in the system. She was taking them to the fake courts. And of course, they destroy people in these fake courts. They're not courts of law. Anyway, we'll go into that later. But
yeah, okay.
She moved away. She had to sell her farm, and she moved to Cumbria. She bought a vicarage up there, and she carried on her processes up there, which, as you can see on the UK Column Report or the Mast magazine report. And she died in 2009. But what happened with me was after I sent those CDs out, I made 500 of them. That's all I could afford to make. But I got hounded by the system in the council, the water board, and everybody else kind of hounded me. And this is what they do. They kind of target you. And so what I ended up doing was getting rid of my bungalow, and I bought a motorhome and I went on the road. So I was on the road for about 10 years, talking to everyone about the European Union and other things, 9/11 when it happened, and a few other things, 7/7, the London bombings, and just educating people and making friends really on the road, which was it was a great way to live. I loved it.
Oh, I bet.
And it wasn't until John Harris came about and did a talk in Glastonbury, which I attended, that I actually understood that the barons had invoked Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta according to the correct protocols of our law. So it was actually in effect. And then I realised, well, there's the remedy. So I realised that we have a lawful excuse not to aid and abet the system, because simply, if you look at the Barons' petition, it proves that the Nice Treaty was treasonous. Okay, and so that's proof, that's evidenced in the petition, although they did also mention the Bill of Rights, which we need to go into because that is actually a treasonous statute. It's, well, a bill. So it's not lawful. And they made the mistake of using that as well. But we all make mistakes, you know, we have to live and learn. So and I've used
every
it
day's a school day.
Yeah, I mean, I woke up to that actually through Ken Dubney's book, Democracy Defined, which is a very good, interesting book. And I would also recommend a video on YouTube by William Cates, who did a talk at the Democrats and Veterans Party's conference about the Constitution. It's very good. It's really worth a watch, and it goes into those aspects of what I've just mentioned. I've diversed a little bit, so I need to just backtrack. So after I realised that Article 61 had been invoked, what I personally did was on the 1st of January, I sent a affidavit, which I had signed by a solicitor, which is all doublethink, but bear in mind I was very young on the path. And I sent it to Buckingham Palace, demanding that the Nice Treaty be remedied, and I gave her 40 days, like Article 61 says, to remedy it, the matter, the treason. So I didn't get a reply, obviously, and in 40 days' time, I served a second affidavit denouncing my allegiance to the Crown and transferring my allegiance to the Barons' Committee, or more accurately, to the Constitution via the Barons. And we need to talk about the Barons as well, because they're AWOL. They've been pretty useless, but we can talk about that and to see why that is later. So what I did was I stopped paying road tax on my truck, and I got a fine from DVLA, £80, which I rebutted by using a conditional acceptance process, which is what we were using and what we do use today. It's a process of 4 notices, really, which we serve on the individuals. Well, that went into quite a long process. It lasted about 2 years, actually, with the police, DVLA, the fake courts, and debt collection agencies and stuff, putting them all on notice of the fact that we all have a duty under constitutional law to stand under Article 61 and to report the treason that is evidently being committed against our sovereignty and obviously the Crown, who protects our sovereignty. And then we need to go into that as well. So sorry if I'm diversing a little.
That's all right. No, we're getting one step at a time.
That started my process in 2010. Now, what I achieved on that in that process is an absolute stalemate, because what occurred was I wouldn't consent to their summonses. The police wouldn't arrest me because I had them on notice of treason evidence as well. So if they had arrested me, then they would have been committing high treason, because they would have been full knowledge of the evidence treason facts that I presented to them. See, so this is where it becomes powerful. So I got to the situation where I was getting a bit of distress from the local police, because I had complaints against some of them. One of them because he wouldn't allow me to report the crime of treason at Devizes police station, and they were a little bit intimidating. So I ended up. Well, this was after I'd got arrested, because they did arrest me after I did all this process. It took about 5 months, and it was by the Chippenham police, not the Devizes, because I used to follow the Devizes police around town, and they wouldn't stop me. Now, bear in mind, I deregistered my truck according to law, and I had my own identification plates, which in fact were not numbers. It was just Wise Crow. It was just a nickname that I used. Silver on black, and no tax disc. I noticed in my window saying that, you know, I'm not under the United Kingdom's jurisdiction, because that's a corporation anyway. And no one took any notice, except for when the Chippenham police were in the area, and they pulled me over to ask me about the number plate or the identification plate. Bearing in mind, they put everyone on notice of what I'd done. So I was still saying, well, there's my identification, take it or leave it, you know, to the police and everyone, DVLA.
Yeah.
And so I did get arrested. I wouldn't comply. I wouldn't consent. They had to put me into the police car. I wouldn't give any joinder, so I wouldn't give them an address. And they wouldn't, at the reading of the charges or in the custody suite, I wouldn't consent. I would not understand their authority. And it took a few times to get them to get what I'm talking about. But I was using also the free man on the land methods at the time, because they were the only allies I could find on the internet that were kind of talking the same language at the time. But there's a lot of doublethink in the free man movement, and we'll probably go into that in a while.
Yeah, if we could, that would be good, because I think I was mentioned the other day, just to interject quickly, if I may.
Yes, fine.
David, yeah. I was just chatting to Darrell the other day, Darrell Bickler. Great conversation with Darrell, as I mentioned to you, about illegal drugs do not exist, which is where we get back into the whole paradigm of the language, and we talk about doublethink and doublespeak. And yes, because it doesn't seem that many people are getting much recourse using the free man on the land kind of approach. Would I be correct in saying so?
Well, the thing of it is, you can get recourse there, but it doesn't tackle the big problem, because what you're doing is you're using their rules and their fake courts to get a remedy, because they don't follow their own rules.
Yes.
But the problem is, it doesn't end the treason. It doesn't end the fake courts from existing. So there's no real remedy. It's like a quick fix.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I realised that quite quickly, fortunately, because I was an admin on FMOTL for a while, and so I understood the free man philosophy. But a lot of them are very hypocritical, and I'm sorry to sort of cause any division there, but you know that we argued a lot about standing under Article 61, yet they claim to be standing under common law. Well, Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta is like the most important. This is the security clause of the Magna Carta, and it's probably the most important common law tenet there is. So it's very hypocritical, you know. So I left the free man movement and I just did it myself using nothing but common law, constitutional law. And I found, because the reason that is, that anyone who opposes me opposes the Constitution, which is either sedition if it's written or stated publicly, or it's treason or high treason if you're on notice of the treason, because there's a lot of evidence of treason about, and then you act against me, you're committing high treason. So whichever way the system wanted to move against me, they had to commit crimes to do so. It takes a bit of courage, I must admit,
I see.
to actually stand up against these people. But after I got arrested and all that went through, and I didn't go to the court hearing, the fake court hearing, and I got intimidated by the police. I headed off to Yorkshire, and I spent about 18 months in Yorkshire getting my head down, because there's no remedy. You know, there's nowhere I could get remedy. I put the Attorney General, Dominic Grieve, on notice, saying you need to get involved in this matter. I got no responses, but I've now got tacit agreement that he's committing high treason. So I've still got a claim against him once we reassert the common law constitution and get proper courts of law up and running again. So with the processes we use, and I will come back to what the original thing was in a minute. With the processes we use, we educate, and we also collect evidence against people that will not observe the truth. And that's all we're dealing with, is evidenced facts. We don't deal with any hearsay. So after I left and I went up to Yorkshire and spent about 18 months in the squat up there with my truck, which I had to sell eventually because they stopped all my entitlements and I was disabled, and I didn't even have to sign on because, you know, I was put down to disabled for life because I've got muscular dystrophy. And they stopped my entitlements completely. This was trying to force me into complying, really. And so I got rid of the truck, and what I did was I wrote up a large affidavit of truth and a load of notices that went with them. So it was about 6 documents in one big document. A lot of Freeman doublethink in it, but I served it on all and sundry. The fake court personnel and the police and whatnot, whoever was making the threats against me. And nothing, obviously I never heard anything back from that, but that you can see that if you put an affidavit of truth, J for Justice website, More Dibs website, you can see that affidavit on there. And like I said, it's man stuff, and I wouldn't use that today. But it was my effort of kind of summarising everything, so that if they did drag me into a fake court, at least I'd have a chance, you know.
Yeah.
So 18 months went past. I left Yorkshire. I came back down to the West Country. I ended up getting a friend of mine to come with me to Bath City Police Station because there was a warrant out for my arrest for 18 months. So I walked into Bath City Police Station with all the evidence against 5 individuals for high treason, including the Dominic Grieve, the Attorney General at the time. And I tried to report these crimes to the police. So they sent a sergeant down to speak to me, a pretty stupid sergeant, to be quite honest. And he phoned up Chippenham Magistrates Court and the Chief Inspector, Ian Copus, who was the Chief Inspector of Head of Roads Traffic Policing in Wiltshire at the time, who I had on notice. And they both told him the matter's being dealt with, but they didn't mention, you know, there's an arrest warrant, arrest him, because that's what I was expecting them to do. So I walked out of there. They wouldn't accept the evidence, which was a crime, and I've got evidence of that because we filmed it, which was a bit risky because they don't like that, but we still did it. And then I walked out, and I realised at that point, there's nothing I can do. You know, I'm more of a threat to them than they are of me. They didn't even want to arrest me and challenge me and bring it to the fore. So I went to the people. That's the only thing I could do. To cut a long story short, I went to Glastonbury and stayed there. I met a few people. I did a talk in Glastonbury. I managed to get about 70 people at a talk in Glastonbury, and I explained my situation. I did about a 3-hour talk, and I managed to get some allies there. They could see where I was coming from. I did quite a lot, like I said, quite a long talk, and explained it all in detail. And I ended up getting somewhere to stay in Glastonbury and creating a group. So we managed to get about 20 odd people to come every week to a group meeting. The trouble with that was, and sadly, I couldn't keep the free man on the land philosophy out of the group. No matter how I tried, they had a couple of dodgy people in the group, kept going down the free man way, and it was never going to work, you see. So I ended up having to stop the group from convening, and I just did it my own way. So the first thing that I actually did for anybody in Glastonbury, because I acted with power of attorney for people, is a friend of mine came to me saying, actually I've gone on a little bit more than what I wanted to do. What I want to say is, we first of all put the council on notice of the fact that Article 61 is in effect. Also put the police on notice. We did public talks in the town. We put flyers through everyone's doors. And we ended up seizing the town hall at Glastonbury because after 3 months, the councillors kept diverting the questions to the TTIP, which was going on at the time, from Article 61, and they would not respond. Even though I'd put them all on full notice of the evidence and facts, they wouldn't respond. And so I said to them, well, in that case, I'm going to seize the building under Article 61. They laughed at me. So I seized the building. About 7 of us seized it. You can see it on YouTube. It's on video. People will say, oh, you gave it back. But we did. But the point was to make the point that you can actually seize a building. If you've got lawful excuse and you've done all the groundwork, no one can oppose you. The police couldn't oppose us. They had to sort of say, well, you're doing nothing wrong and we've got other things to do. Do you mind giving it back at some point? And we did at 2 a.m. the next morning because the janitor was really a nice guy and he wanted to go in for his tea. And we could have taken the keys off him, but all we wanted to do was make the point that you can seize this. And it was like done under duress and protest. And it was done on the spur of the moment. So it wasn't well recorded or it was just done on the spur of the moment. Didn't know I was going to seize it.
Yeah.
So the first process that I did successfully was for a friend of mine who turned up to help seize the building. So I had a bit of respect for her already. And she came to me with 24 hours to present herself for a committal for 7 days in prison. This was because she'd ignored 2 county court alleged summonses, and she'd been served 7 days contempt of court notice to serve 7 days in prison. And she had 24 hours to reply or present herself to the police. So what I asked her to do was to phone them up, see if we can get a bit more time so we could had a bit of time to sort out the process. So she did, and they gave her 2 weeks she made up some excuse. So I got power of attorney for the matter, and I started the process with the so-called court. And I went up against a district judge, Richard Bromilo, from Yeovil County Court, who was vehemently attempting to put her in prison. So we had to rebut summonses. We had to put them all on notice of her standing under Article 61 and the fact that water is illegal to actually support because Thatcher stole this public service in 1989. But we can go into that a bit later, maybe. And so, to cut a long story short with it, we went through quite a long process with it, also taking on the process server and other people, the police as well. And it just went away. it went away. I put, I had the so-called district judge on notice for high treason if he was going to continue, and they just went away. Everyone went away, just dropped it. Nothing happened. She never got arrested. She never got, the process server wouldn't come round because we threatened him if he did to put with arrest, and we'd also served a big notice to stop on him, being quite assertive in this notice, and he didn't turn up. So it just went away. And most people ignored that. And I think that was quite an important thing that we did. And you can see the process in the layman's guide at the back from page 69. There's 3 successful processes. We've got all the documents that I served, or transcripts of them, because I couldn't upload the actual documents. So I didn't have a scanner. But trust me, they're there. They're still out there. You can see how we actually managed to deal with that. It just went away. Then the second successful process I did was with power of attorney again for a friend in Glastonbury who had been harassed by HMRC for not filling in tax return forms for about 3 years at the time, from 2001 to 2014, which is the time we were at. So I did the same process with them. We served about 4 or 5 notices on them. And I'm just cutting the story short because that's also in the layman's guide, the Lawful Dissent.
Cool.
And we got 2 conflicting letters back within 3 days at the end of this whole process. One saying, you owe this money, pay it up or else. And the second one, 3 days later, saying, we're very sorry to have caused you any concern. Although we don't agree with the points you've made, nothing's changed since you last filled in a tax return form, and so we're going to refund your £1,700, and we're going to cross the £1,250 fine that is pending. If you think you owe us tax in the future, please get in contact. And that was the end of that process. You got a cheque for £1,700, and it all went away.
Ooh.
So that was all we used there was Article 61's invocation and evidence of high treason that's being committed. And they went away, because we put them personally liable, the individual, the guys that are actually making the demands on us, we put them individually liable for their actions or omissions, which they are under common law. We all are,
Yes.
So that was that one. And then we did another one, which was a friend was growing hemp plants in a garden. She grew 36 hemp plants, and she got busted, and we got all that on video. Quite illegal, stealing her vegetable matter. She was growing it in protest because they say you need a license to grow hemp. And now she had a juice bar in Glastonbury, and so she needed the hemp for the juicing. And she did it under duress and protest while standing under Article 61, but they raided her property and stole all her vegetable matter. So I went after them again with power of attorney for her, and you can see that process in the layman's guide as well. And the long and the short of it is, after quite a process, mind, they they said, due to lack of evidence, this is the Crown Prosecution Service, due to lack of evidence, we are discontinuing the matter. And we could have gone after them with a claim, because part of the process was they offered her a caution. And I went round to her house when the police officer, not a constable, turned up to offer her the caution. And I said, well, we'll accept it under duress of circumstances, because therefore she's not committing liability. She's not admitting liability. And they didn't like that. They said, well, we've had it analysed, and it's actually cannabis, and you'll get a summons. I said, well, okay, do it. And but the end result was they ran away again, due to lack of evidence. Now, they had 36 half-grown hemp plants. They weren't small things. They had lots of evidence, but they didn't have any because they weren't cannabis plants anyway. But we use the fact that there's no law against cannabis. There's no law against growing it, using it, or giving it to your friends, or selling it even. This is all illegal rules, not law.
As I mentioned earlier, yes, thank you, David. if anyone's interested in this kind of stuff, pop over and check out my chat with Darrell Bickler entitled "Illegal Drugs Do Not Exist," and this is the thread that he's going down now, which is it's a separate thread to the stuff you're talking about, but intrinsically linked, because this all fits in together. They're all different pieces of the jigsaw. So go on, as you were saying, carry on.
Well, where am I going from there? Well, so I created the Facebook group page, Practical Lawful Dissent, and decided that Facebook, although Facebook's a government-controlled, you get a lot of people that haven't got a clue on Facebook. So I thought, well, it's best to go to. There's no point in trying to educate the knowledgeable. We might as well go to the people that don't know what's going on. And we just been building up numbers for 6 years. Very, very cagey about who we allow to stay on the group. We've got about 1,000 trolls blocked or more. There's a lot of trolls out there.
Yeah.
And we're fair, but we're firm. I'm fair and firm. So when you come on, if you come on to Practical Lawful Dissent, you're not going to get all the numpty stuff. You're not going to get anything diverted from the what we're actually doing there, which is to give people a practical application, a lawful and peaceful application of applying our constitutional law, which we need to defend. Otherwise, we lose our sovereignty. So this is what it's all about, essentially, is retaining our constitutional law, which protects the people, not the government, which is why they're trying to destroy it, and have been for a very long time, actually. We'll go into this. And that's the main objective of the movement, is to help people use the process in the similar way that I did to get them to back off, and that's what we're all about there. If anyone comes on to the group page, please have a look in the files, read the pinned post. New members, please read this. Have a look in the files. The layman's guide is in there. PDFs, you can download it. There's lots of files. We've got about 130, 40 files. Excuse me. So, and then please make comments if you don't understand anything afterwards. Otherwise, the admin and the moderators, we tend to go around in circles a lot, and it gets quite laborious. But we'll always answer good questions, especially when someone's taken the time to have a little look for themselves. Okay, I guess we need to go into the constitutional law, really, what it is. Should we go there now?
If you would, yes, please. And obviously, you talk about the layman's guide on the page, and as you say, yeah, I understand. I'm guilty of myself. You go onto a page and ask, a straightforward question, and people are like, well, hang on a minute, have you taken the time to read through the pinned kind of information? Because this is kind of what the internet has become now, isn't it? It's just that people want instant information, but you do have to take the time to digest, what's been discovered so far. But I like that you mentioned there that you're always happy to kind of have a bit of discourse and answer questions, legitimate questions, because it's an evolving process, right? And as you said, your own personal process has been an evolution where things you were doing a few years back, in hindsight, didn't quite get that right. But on the path, you're trying the best you can do. And as you say, it's an evolutionary process. We are learning as we go and improving the process. And I said the idea of you and I talking today is just to raise awareness, really. This is
that's what it's about. That's what it's about, because we do have a remedy against these despots, and they're not our representatives. I mean, we have a remedy, but only when we unite. And because Article 61 is mandatory, it's not. If you read Article 61, you'll see that it's mandatory, and it was designed to unite the people. Because the only remedy against institutionalized treason or corruption is the unity of the people, because we are then the force that to be reckoned with. Like in 1215, it didn't come to bloodshed, and we'll go into this in a minute, but King John was under duress, like any tyrant would be, because he didn't want to give up the divine right of kings to be a tyrant. But there was no bloodshed because he was going to lose his crown or possibly his head if he didn't stand under his coronation oath and to seal Magna Carta, so that he's under the law as well. Because now, of course, due to Magna Carta, and before that, we can go back further to Alfred the Great, but everyone is under the law. and we need to go through a little bit how the estates, which are the ruling families, have attempted to destroy the people's sovereignty, which I will explain what the people's sovereignty is later as well. Since 1216, really. I mean, King John attempted to get Pope Innocent III to revoke Article 61. To revoke the 1215 Magna Carta, but his barons wouldn't allow it. His peers wouldn't allow it, and neither would they allow to pay tribute to the Pope, or allow him to put his choice of Archbishop of Canterbury into the English Church. And of course, our constitution is based on God's law, on natural law, really. It's natural. We're born with our human rights. We don't ask the UN or the EU for their human rights. It's because that's doublethink. It's you're saying, well, accept your human rights, and we've got them inalienably there when we were born. You know, it's like some people say they're God-given, if you like. Well, the principles of the Bible are what we're focused on here today, because there's also a lot of disinformation in the Bible and stuff. And, obviously I don't want to go into that too much, but religion always creates division, I'm afraid. So we leave that at the doorstep if we can.
Yeah.
So we're going back to what constitutional law is. And basically King Alfred the Great sent out his Wittens into the countryside to gather the local laws. And he created what is the common law. And he stuck it all in the Doom Book, or the Book of Dome, or Dome Book. And the 4 principles of common law are to cause no harm, to cause no loss, to be peaceful in your doings, and to be honourable within your agreements or contracts. And that's it. That's the 4 principles that cover every eventuality in life. Now, anyone that doesn't want to stand under those, who isn't happy to be governed by those principles, really, I would say maybe has an ulterior motive, because they're heart-driven principles. I don't want to cause you any harm, loss, or breach the peace, or rip you off, do I? So that's just simple, basic human decency, isn't it? And that's what the common law is built under. So King Alfred the Great created a system of the common law courts, where the people were the judges, and it was basically created at local level. It works best at local level because it was the local people that were selected to be in the jury, and it was a random selection process. They also selected the arbitrator, who we call today the judge, who's not a judge in any trial, and it even says under Article 24 of Magna Carta that the Crown shall not, its bailiffs, judges, sheriffs, or whatever, cannot hold court. So that's even a part of the Magna Carta principles, that they can't hold court. The courts are made by the people, for the people, and they have to vote on the evidence that the jury decide is admissible. It's the jury that are the judges, and there is old law books and stuff that actually state this, and you'll find that in Ken Dewdney's Democracy Defined, although I have put it in the files as well. I plagiarised a little bit of his work because it was quite good, just for education purposes. Yeah. So King Alfred the Great set up the courts where the people were operating in this manner, and any judges that started to take control, he had them hung. He didn't mess around with it comes to sovereignty. Yeah. So this is why the people are sovereign, because under the common law, the common law jury process, the jury have also the right to judge the law. So they can annul any government or any legislation, because there was no government at the time in Alfred's day, and in fact not until at least 1236, but I'll go into that in a bit. They have the duty to judge the law as well as the crime. And the crime is only ever a crime if there's criminal intent, malice of forethought. That's when it's a crime. Because I can I don't know, come around to your place, knock over your pot plants, and cause you a loss or whatever, and it's not a crime, but I still have I have to remedy it under common law because I've
Yeah.
caused you a loss. That's the difference there. So in 1066, we were taken over by the Normans, and Norman influences came into the law, came into the processes of law up and down the country. And so we had the Charter of Liberties in 1100, the Great Charter of Liberties, which was basically a precursor to Magna Carta, really. Magna Carta 1215 has Norman influences. It's not strictly common law, but the common law has survived through it in much to a degree. And certain things like trial by combat are not common law. And some of the courts that were being used in Magna Carta, the King's Court, the courts of the forest, the county magistrates' courts, they were not run according to the common law. They had tribunals, more like with judges, and they were basically illegal. So it got usurped in a way, by Magna Carta a little bit, the true common law. But the petite assizes were still run at local level by the people, as said, as they should have been. That ended in 1285. Oh, I skipped a bit there. The Parliament didn't even exist until the first part of Parliament that existed was in 1236. It was basically the King's Court, which has evolved to the Queen's Bench or King's Bench, and it was the first start.
Sorry, Dave, if I just quickly. The King's Bench is something I was only recently introduced to by a recent acquaintance of mine, a guy called David. I won't say a second, but yeah, an interesting concept. We don't have to get into that now. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Andy Devine. Apparently, he's the guy to talk to about this kind of stuff. So we'll be looking to get into that later on. But go on, continue as you were saying. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, I will get into that later on. The Parliament actually existed from 1236, but it evolved into what it is today gradually over a longer period. Parliament in 1285 brought in jury restrictions, wealth restrictions for jurors, which was against the sovereignty of the people because there was never any restrictions for jurors except for the obvious ones where you can't have mad people or people that have committed serious crimes or any crimes actually to sit as a juror. You had to have honourable people really who had all their senses about them, who weren't deaf, dumb and blind, so they couldn't not see or hear the evidence, whatever, just common sense things.
Yeah.
But they brought in wealth restrictions so that the landowners could only really basically, or people with money could sit as jurors. And of course, they were more easily persuaded by the corrupt judges, the estates. The corporations have been there for thousands of years, really. People don't realise. And they did put jurors in prison. They did cause them distress and alarm and harm, which is totally unlawful because they wouldn't always judge the way the judge demanded they did, you see? And I call him a judge loosely because he was simply an arbitrator who shouldn't even been there anyway. The Crown does have an obligation under a constitutional monarch to execute the sentence of a jury, and that's fine under a constitutional monarch when a judge is on his judicial oath. Although a judge must always be appointed by the people. It's not, you can't really be a Crown agent. This is the whole misdirection of it all. It's insidious and it's been going on for a very long time. So in 1285, the sovereignty of the people was usurped back then, and it's been a process of a ratchet by ratchet, as my friend Elizabeth Beckett used to say. It's a ratchet by ratchet process, and it's been going on for a very long time. Now, in 1225, they attempted to divert Magna Carta by the Charter of the Forests, trying to say that was basically the new Magna Carta, which it wasn't, of course. And Magna Carta says three times in Clause 1, 61, and 63 that it is forever. It can only be changed by the people under a constitutional convention of the people. Parliament, it's pre-parliamentary. It can't be touched by Parliament. Yet in 1297, Parliament illegally brought it into statute form and then tried to deceive everybody that they'd repealed most of it. which they say today. They've repealed all but 3 clauses, which is totally bull. Really, it's wrong, and it's totally illegal to bring a constitutional document, which is permanently created, into statute, which government can then repeal or change, and a statute can't stay as a bill or an act or a statute cannot stay as it is without it being first given royal assent by a constitutional monarch, meaning that it has to be constitutional, and the monarch is bound by their coronation oath, and then it has to survive the jurors' verdicts, where they can say that's an unconstitutional bill, act, or statute, and we throw it out. So it hasn't had those processes, and so the 1297 version still are lingering in the background. And whenever you mention Magna Carta, that's what the imposters in Westminster will refer to, and they do it every time. Even the police, even the fake courts, they're all doing it, just ignoring the facts, the evidence facts that it is illegal and it has no weight according to the 1215 Magna Carta. So we can jump really quite a way forward now to the 1285 Juries Act, which again is proof in much earlier times, later times, that the jury's service was usurped by wealth restrictions. You just have to read the first paragraph, really. And so what happened after that was the coronation oath was carried on from Henry I, which was the first written coronation oath that was created. It's very basic. It basically said, because my predecessors have been very naughty, I'm reasserting the laws of the church. Very loosely, that's what it says. But that was reasserted over many generations, kings and queens, up until Charles II. Well, that was the last time it was properly a proper oath was asserted or reaffirmed by any of our so-called kings and queens. And actually, that was in 1661. Well, Charles II then went on to give royal assent to the Sesquiquivir Act of 1666, which most people know about. It created the legal fiction, the notion that we're dead entities and stuff after 7 years old, and all that rubbish.
Just a quick interjection then, David. You mentioned John Harris earlier. I've got a good video on my on the playlist on the channel. I think it's the Essential Viewing. Yeah, it's the Essential Viewing playlist. John Harris, Laws and Illusion, which, if anyone wants to get a little bit deeper into all this kind of legal entity, legal fiction stuff, fantastic video. Essential Viewing, in my opinion. So yeah, be sure to go and check that out as well if this is a field of interest to you. But go on, say as you were.
The one thing I'll say about John Harris, because he met Elizabeth Becket as well, so he had a bit of a schooling. But the one thing I fell out with John Harris a little bit, because he ended up saying, "Oh, but it's not for us. It's not for us. Magna Carta, Article 69. It's not for us." And that, when he said that, I couldn't believe why he'd said it. And then he went off on this spiritual path, you see, and kind of he said he was the rightful king. I was just lost interest in John, but I was very grateful for what he did. He brought about some awareness. Yeah, and some of his videos are really good to watch. But I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
So in 1666, the Sesquiquivir Act was given royal assent by Charles II, which was a breach of his coronation oath. And it was because his coronation oath was to defend the laws and customs of the people. And he also committed treason against the sovereignty of the people by doing that. However, it had already been usurped by the Juries Act and previous government intervention for the juries, as I've said. So you can go back to 1285, really. But we need to keep this more up to date, really. And I think this is where we're leading with it, with this group. So what happened after that was in 1688, after James II had fled the country, because he was another tyrant, they weren't under proper oath either, I believe, at that time. And that's, I need to check that actually, because I just reckon from Charles II, that was where the treason started, really, because of the 1666 Act. So that's my reference point with that. But in 1688, William and Mary came to the throne, who were invited to the throne. They were Dutch. They weren't really the heirs to the throne. Anyway, this was the estates, again, attempting to further rat by ratchet, destroy our common law constitution. So the Bill of Rights was created, which stated that, the Coronation Oath was created, which stated that the king or the queen, both of them at the time, would swear to abide by the statutes in Parliament, not by the laws of the people, you see. So in 1688, the Coronation Oath was a usurpation of previous oaths, which were to the people and to the common law constitution and to God's law. And are we out of time or something? Oh no, I just said a bell, go on. So in 1688 also the Bill of Rights was created, which did the same thing as the Coronation Oath. It took away it meant that the Crown could not act according to the royal prerogative, which was to deny any government acts or statutes from becoming law without consent of Parliament. So the two highlighted pieces in the Bill of Rights in the file that we have on it, first of all, the first highlighted piece is about James II's criminal. It reads as a criminal dossier, really, of his crimes, because he was quite a tyrant. And the second part is under the subject's rights, and it also says the same thing by the pretended powers. The Crown, I'm just paraphrasing, cannot act without consent of the Parliament, which usurps the Crown and usurps the original Coronation Oath that the Crown should have taken anyway. So you can see how they usurped it on both occasions there, the Coronation Oath and the Bill of Rights. They're both illegal documents. They are still on the statute books, but they are totally criminal. So we don't refer to them as anything constitutional, because like I said earlier, something constitutional is a permanent thing, and acts and statutes, unless they're granted into law by both the Royal Assent, properly done according to the real Coronation Oath, and by the jurors, then it doesn't become law. And because you cannot, no Parliament can bind its successor, which there has been happening all the way through since 1688, that's illegal anyway, and that's a maxim in law. No Parliament can bind its successor. So this is how they managed to usurp the Constitution. Now, people will can go and see what the Coronation Oath in 1953 was about. I've jumped forward from something I wanted to mention, actually, which was the 1911 Parliament Act, which was another usurpation of the monarch's duties. And it was Charles the. Sorry, no, gosh.
Oh, he's got a brain fog.
I just had
it's all the time, David. In your own time, brother. In your own time, brother. Stream of consciousness. That's what we're about. So, yeah, sometimes that little interruption comes in, but I'm sure it'll come back to you.
It was Edward VII that denied Asquith's bill, Parliament Bill in 1910, and when he mysteriously died, not so long afterwards, it was George V that came in and he granted it royal assent. So again, another act of treason by a king. Now, George V was Elizabeth II's grandfather. So already, she had inherited a usurped office of sovereign. So she's never actually been the queen anyway. And there's other proof that she hasn't been the queen. And we can actually say that a lot of people are not very happy with the queen and the things she's been getting up to. But we can't judge for ourselves that she isn't being controlled from day one, from a baby, to do all this stuff. So,
this is the point.
We're actually, we have to think that way under common law, innocence until proven guilty. So I'm not going to tell you too much about the Queen on that respect, only to say that she's inherited a treasonous office of sovereign. She's not protected the laws. Now, her coronation oath, they didn't want it televised. The BBC had to pressurise them to do it. But in that coronation oath, she does swear to uphold the people's law and the laws of God and of the dominions, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc., according to the people's respective law. Now, what we found is having looked at the colonies' constitution, because they should still be under the English and Commonwealth constitution, because that's how it's meant to be, because it protects their sovereignty. Well, they were given independence by Australia was by Queen Victoria in 1900, and they had a referendum on a new constitution there, which did the same thing as what our constitution is doing. Well, the bills and government legislation is doing today. It usurps the sovereignty of the people. It made the Parliament sovereign, which it can never be. It's a contradiction in terms anyway, because it's Her Majesty's government. It's not the other way around. Yeah. And it also did not protect their rights as jurors in properly convened courts. So they are treasonous, and we're getting through. We've got a Canadian group. We're trying to get through to the Australians more now, because they are tending to rely on the Australian Constitutional Act, which is what it is, a Constitution Act. Same as in Canada, it's an act, which is like I said, a contradiction, to get remedy against their government at the moment. And it's doublethink, because it doesn't actually protect them, although there's some good stuff in there which you would think it would protect them. But they need to come to terms with the fact that it's usurpation of the proper common law constitution, So this is where we've got to today, and it's got worse and worse. We've had treason committed by entering into the European Union, and Edward Heath knew damn well that in 30 years we would lose our national sovereignty, which means we can only be slaves. And there's an evidence file which comes from the National Archives, from the Public Records Office, called FCO 30, which stands for Foreign and Commonwealth Office, document 30-1048. And that proves, this proves that, because the letters that were in communications between Heath and his co-conspirators proved that they knew damn well what was going to happen by signing up to the EEC. And they even discussed how they need to keep this from the people. It's all evidence fact that we were never in the EU. Brexit, therefore, is doublethink, misdirection, and also treason, because you can't actually, by law, grant Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty any authority to exit the EU, which we were never lawfully in. You see, this is what a lot of the people in the Brexit movement don't seem to understand, because according to them, because they've been misled and lied to, Brexit means to vote against being in the EU, which it does, but it's a misdirection, and it's a trap, because by doing that, we're granting the Lisbon Treaty with authority over British law or English common law,
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really want to make that point clear, because a lot of Brexiters would benefit from what we're doing and using the common law constitution as evidence against this corrupt and treasonous regime. And we need to do this together. If we all unite, we can bring a challenge, very public challenge, to the usurping agents in the realm in Westminster, and we can make this go away. Because we are the force when we stand together, and always have been.
Indeed. There are a lot more of us than there are of them, David, as we well know. And,
but we're kept so well divided, and the reason why this truth that we're promoting and evidencing. I mean, I've provided evidence of it. Like with the seizure of the town hall. Although everyone says, "Oh, well, you gave it back. You didn't do anything." We did. We proved it. I've also proved it with the processes, with the prison sentence and the other things, HMRC. So it's people ignoring the facts again, and this is where we need to start pulling together and stand by the truth, and that's all we do in this group. We don't promote or make any claims that aren't evidential, absolutely provable, and
that's important makes this for a lot of people.
Pardon?
Yeah, I was just saying, it's important for a lot of people to have that evidence there,
Of course.
We talk to a lot of different people from, all different walks of life, and, it's the difference between, experiential, anecdotal kind of information, which is all good and well, and it's fine. Like I said, the ethos is everything on the table. Let's just get it all out there. But for a lot of people who come from this kind of materialistic, scientific kind of paradigm, it's understandable. I need to see the evidence. Where's the evidence? And as you
Yes.
say, with your stuff there, it's all logged and evidenced and quite clear to see. So yeah, that will resonate with a lot of people, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to see how many people come along and.
Well, that would be great. That'd be great, Jimmy, because we all we want is people to know the truth. We want people to defend themselves because children are being stolen in completely illegal secret courts. You know, the thing is with the common law constitution, it protects us so well because justice must be seen to be done. It must be seen to be done. And this is part of it. There has to be public, nothing can be done in secret. Children can be protected in other ways, but you cannot have secret courts because you get these star chambers. They do what they like to in these star chambers, and nothing you can do because all they have is force. And we have, in our individual capacity, no remedy against that. But when we stand together and we assert our sovereignty, we assert our inalienable rights, we have the threat of force, and that's all that we're going to need. Now, I need to come at this point to our main problem. And most people will probably understand this anyway, because it's the main problem for most people, especially children getting this, people getting their children stolen, is the police. Now, the police are acting as the gatekeepers. We have collectively put every police force area on notice of the treason. We have, as a group, after trying to defend one of our members who had been hounded by the Birmingham so-called magistrates court for growing 6 cannabis plants while he was in remission from cancer, they kicked his door down, they stole his cannabis plants, they put him in prison for 18 months. But the worst thing is, they went after him with that theft tool that they created called the Proceeds of Crime Act.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they stole his house. So we got really annoyed about this. I had power of attorney for David Robotham after meeting him in Birmingham. It just cuts me up a bit, I'm sorry.
Oh,
He's a lovely
no.
guy. He's a lovely guy, and he's done nothing wrong, you know?
Yeah,
we tried to help him. So I put Birmingham Police Headquarters, the Chief Constable, the Chief Inspector, and the Chief Superintendent on notice of the facts that we can prove that Birmingham Magistrates Court had committed high treason, because I put them all on notice of it. We did the process with each individual there. There was 4 individuals involved. Can't remember their names off the top of my head, but we've got it all logged and evidenced.
Yeah.
So what we did after that, because we got ignored by police headquarters, totally ignored. So we decided to go up there and give them a bit of a challenge face to face. So 50 of us convened on the 28th of November on a cold winter's day at Corporation Street, the Crown Pub in Birmingham on the 28th of November. And we had Jolyon Jenkins from BBC Radio 4, who we'd agreed with stipulations that he could do a report on the movement. We didn't trust him. We never trusted him, but we thought, well, we know what the BBC do all the time, but any sort of promotion is better than none. So we agreed to do it, but he did a show on us, calling us the Queen's enemies, and he just did a right hatchet job on the movement, because we were standing by the truth. So anyway, what we did was we kind of put out that we were going to go and arrest the individuals at Birmingham Magistrates Court, just to mislead the police a bit, because we knew they would watch us, and they did. They were waiting for us when we got to Birmingham. About 50 of us joined. We decided what we would do is go to police headquarters and demand an interview room, and we were going to get it all on video, which is exactly what we did. And you can see the video. It's in the announcement part of the Practical Lawful Dissent group page. It's only a short video demanding an interview room and videoing them receiving the evidence against Birmingham Magistrates Court for their treason. Now, so what they did after that, we set up an email communications with the Sergeant Rafiq Khan, who was basically representing the police at the time, as a representative, obviously, and we had a little bit of email communications, and then he just backed out. He said, "Oh, you need to go and talk to somebody else about this." And so, together as a group, we created an affidavit of truth. We served that on them as well by agreement of the people. About 200 odd people signed it. They PP'd it, which means we signed it with their consent, and we served that. We also served notices of obligation on the Chief Constable and the Chief Superintendent of Birmingham headquarters, of course totally ignored. And so we later served a notice of no confidence on Birmingham Police. You can see all these notices in the files, exactly what we did. And we had to leave it at that, basically, because the only remedy we've got, mate, is we've got to join together. We've got to unite. We've got to reassert the common law constitution so that we have courts of law, not corporate-run treasonous businesses using EU regulations or directives, rubber stamped through Parliament, against us. They're using nothing but treasonous legislation that has not been given royal assent. It has not been adjudged by the jurors, and we're being suppressed by this stuff, you know? So that's the only remedy we've got, and it can be done peacefully. And I'll just finish that little bit there by saying I've written up a proposed strategy for remedy against treason, which is in the files. If you want to jump through to the actual proposed strategy, just go to page 69 and you can read a few pages there. I've also cut it short on a little file, which I put up today, actually, just so that people don't have to read the whole document. I included some good information in the whole thing to see what jurors will do, what the Constitution is, and excuse me, just to give people a better understanding. Because the layman's guide is done in layman's terms. There's not a lot in there. I mean, it shows you how to do the process and how we successfully used it. That's about it. So we've done an awful lot of work. We've done all the work. All you need to do is come and have a look at it and judge for yourself. I mean, we like skepticism. After you've had a look, we appreciate skepticism because we may have missed something. Perhaps we need to learn something else. Perhaps we've not been infallible in the past. I used to promote the Bill of Rights, not realising that it usurps the royal prerogative. So it's like you say, it's a growing understanding of the law.
That's it. Every day is a school day.
Say again?
Every day is a school day.
Oh, every day is a school day, so it is. But I think we've got it down pat now. I don't think there's much more. Maybe that sounds arrogant. I don't mean to be.
No, not at all. You've put a lot of effort in, so and it's not, as you say, it's not just yourself. It's a collective thing, but you're primarily, mouthpiece for the page and everything else. And as you said, you put a lot of effort in, so you've kind of come to that understanding. But as you said, you've always reserved the right to be wrong about anything and to be able to kind of make amendments and evolve the process even further. But going back, if I may, to the peaceful remedy, I think this is of paramount importance. To play into what they want, which is, so I'll give you an example then, and this something that I came across was the fact that police whistleblower was talking about the London riots. They were ready to rock and roll. They could have shut that shit down instantly, and they were told to stand down. And the guys, wow, no, they're out, they're causing riots. Just stand down, because it was all by design. I think afterwards, then there was a lot of hardware introduced through the police forces. There was a lot of different directives with regards to mobile communications. I was actually in prison with a young chap who I think he had 3 or 4 years for. It might be less. Forgive me. I'll put a link in the description box to the article. He was inciting riots over Facebook or one of the social media platforms. So I think his may have been one of the landmark cases where, for that act of, they call it malicious communications and similar terminology, it's all been done by design. Let's have a little riot. Let's let them burn a few buildings down, get a bit of public outrage. So then they, as David Icke calls it, the old problem reaction solution is the Hegelian.
You make some very good points there.
Yeah, so we need to be aware of all this. We see what's going on in Hong Kong right now. That is not the route we want to be going down, because whilst they're always outnumbered, they're never outgunned.
No. We don't want it to go like it has in France. I mean, you can see why they've risen up, because Macron is a complete tyrant, but they didn't really have a focus. And this is what we're saying with other groups. It's like the Yellow Vest. Bless them all. We're getting off their bums.
Yes, indeed.
There's no focus. There's nothing to, marching up and down the street actually can cause problems, because they put agent provocateurs in, and it's a media opportunity.
Yes.
Oh, we need more regulations for your protection. We're going to bring down martial law for your protection. This is what they would ultimately like.
Yes.
So we don't ever state that we go on the streets. And if we do, it'll be with a direction, with a strong strategy, which I think we've provided within the proposed strategy guide. Because, like you say, we're being played all the time. And the government, these imposters, I won't call them the government, they are imposters. And they're perverts, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know how to manipulate. It's social engineering. They know how to manipulate our concepts. And I'll give you a good example of one concept that nearly everybody states, is that we vote governments into power. Everyone says it, but we are only supposed to vote our representative or governments into service. And this is a very important point, because it changes the whole concept of how you see yourself in society.
Yes.
Now, we're supposed to be living in a system of service, as I was mentioning earlier. And our system of service has been insidiously usurped, ratchet by ratchet, especially by Margaret Thatcher, who sold off, say, let's take the water industry, for example. In 1989, Thatcher privatized the water industry, which was ours. It's a public service. You can talk about the train service, the buses, all these services, which you've always had to pay for, mind you, but they were paid for already by the public taxation. My father and grandfather, when they brought in the welfare state after the war, they paid heavier taxes for us to have a system of service, so we wouldn't have to pay for water. And because we've been under a treasonous regime since 1688 minimum, we've never had that. We've never had a true system of service. This is important to understand. It's like when they brought in the poll tax and the council tax. They said, oh, yeah, but you won't have to go and pay any money to get into the swimming pool or the sauna or whatever. And they blatantly lied about that. You can't go to any of these so-called places without having to pay anyway. So they're double dipping. We're paying through the nose. They're gradually putting us all into slavery, debt slavery, and we need to sort that out after we sorted the treason out first. We need to sort out the money system. We want a non-reserve fractional banking system like the Bradbury Pound.
Yeah,
and I would, well, at this time, they introduced that in the Second World War. It was a non-inflation based currency, basically, to put it very bluntly. It wasn't some agency lending our government money at interest, which is what the bankers have been doing for so long now. They're so damn wealthy and criminal and perverted, because they think they've got all the power in the world. Well, they're soon going to find out they don't have all the power in the world,
Yes.
So we need to sort out that. And I would mention the Chartist movement at the moment is, I'm very keen on the new Chartist movement. We've got to not make the same mistakes as the Chartists did in 1835, because it became violent.
Right,
but the Winchester Declaration and the Restoration Amendment is totally in line with the common law constitution, and I support that, and the group supports it. So we're aligned with them. We're aligned with the British Constitution group, not the Facebook one that's been kind of gone mad. The Facebook group, but the real website, British Constitution group, is very good stuff on there. It focuses on treason. It has other stuff, but it's a very good site to go into as well and support. Another our website is denouncingthedeception.co.uk, and that's a good website. It has the layman's guide on. What we find on the Facebook group is people sometimes can't access the files because some phones won't be able to do it.
Okay.
So they struggle and say, well, I can't access it. I can't open this document. Well, if you can't, go to Denounce the Deception website, and you can see, you just put in Denounce the Deception, and Layman's Guide, and you'll go straight to the Layman's Guide. It's about to be updated because we've got the final edit after 5 years of creating it. It's quite a large document, but it's thorough enough. It's the first 68 pages, shows you how we do it, how you can use it's got examples of notices that we've used successfully. And then after page 69, it's the processes we've used successfully anyway. So it's not too big a reader. It looks like a big document, but...
Well, we spend plenty of time watching Netflix and bloody football and all the rest. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I can spend 16 hours straight on YouTube like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's about where you want to put your energy, because where your attention goes, your energy flows and all that jazz. And it's like, you know, as you said, there are two threads to this train of thought. Is the one of, you know, you say 68 pages is quite long, but, you know, people need to get a bit more clued up on this stuff. And perhaps it isn't for everyone, but everyone has got their own field of interest or somewhere where they can contribute. And I think we'll find, hopefully, which is what my kind of dream is and my goal, my aim, is to have such a diverse range of guests, of fields of interest that I've kind of been following and researching and studying, that the unity will come through our shared, just as you said, is these fundamental human tenets of like, just essentially the spirit is do no harm, take no shit, essentially. That's what it boils down to, right? And as you say, that's not hard to follow. So, like I said, what I'm hoping is, by having such a diverse range of guests coming on, for which I'm very eternally grateful for, and I hope long may it continue, that we will be able to get that diversity and kind of get these people together and, like I say, raise awareness and go forward with it.
What I'd like to say at this point is that if people want to stand under the law and defend our law that was created by the people for the people, and you know, use it, then you have an obligation. It's mandatory to stand under Article 61 of the Magna Carta. You're going to get a lot of propaganda out there saying it wasn't invoked correctly, the barons were impotent. Well, the barons are AWOL, they are impotent. They didn't really know what they were getting into, but the fact is they invoked it according to the correct protocols of constitutional law. The only thing they did wrong, which they should have insisted on, is a private audience with, I say, Queen Elizabeth, but she hasn't been the Queen. But the point there is they went through Sir Robin Jambrin, her private secretary, and he responded with the reply from the petition. Now, they gave her 40 days to respond, and she responded on the 39th day. Now, he couldn't have responded without giving the truth, because he'd have been committing perjury and possibly treason by doing so. So the response we got was very short, or they got was very short, saying, I'm doing what the government tell me, basically. Then that's almost an indication of, look, you know, she gave the barons no option but to invoke Article 61. That's almost like saying, you know, just get on with it and invoke it and wake people up, because we think, you know, that her herself may well be held hostage by the corporations. We don't know. We have to presume innocence.
This is it. We don't know. You know, it's only a wise man who knows he knows nothing and all that kind of stuff. And as you say, yeah, I like exactly what you said there. And I've had similar thoughts myself. You know, everyone's like, oh, you know, I'm not going to get into it right now, but this stuff that's going on now, the Prince Andrew situation and all the rest of it. And that's an aside. This isn't relevant to the point I'm about to make. But as you say, she could very well be being held hostage. We don't know. It's like, and that is the crux of it. But the more we're going to be able to come together, the more everything comes out on the table, the more we're going to be able to evolve our understanding of everything. Yeah. I've really enjoyed this so far, David. I think this will be a good moment now. We've been just over an hour. If we take a little break, and then perhaps we can come back and anything else you want to discuss. And perhaps if we preempt then, and by that I mean there's going to be a lot of comeback, I guess, in the comment section for people who have other ideas, who have opposing views, etc., etc. And obviously, we can follow up any ones that you find later on, you know, have answered. So we can follow up with another video. But if we could, perhaps maybe, and I say we'll have a little break now. Perhaps you can have a little think about it. Preempt the things that you've experienced over the last couple of years of where the opposing views come in and how we can perhaps resolve those, you know, reconcile those differences for people who are maybe not quite on board, or maybe have been on board, or maybe see things in a different light. Does that sound all right?
That'd be fine. Can I just make one final point before we break?
Of course you can.
The point I want to make is that the so-called Queen, and I always have to say it as it is, I'm afraid. I'm sorry if it gets boring.
No, that's all we do, yeah. Say it as it is.
The so-called Queen, she could have ignored them. She could have written to the barons and said it was repealed, just like the fake government do. But she didn't do that. She did neither of those. And it's like an indication saying, Magna Carta 1215 is in effect today, and it is. And there's a lot of evidence to prove that's the case. She also addressed the Australians in 2015 when we celebrated Magna Carta 1215, of course. Basically saying the same thing, that it's effective and it's always bound to the crown. So we'll leave it there, but we'll come in after with that other. Thank you very much, Jimmy. I could do.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And for the listeners, we'll just take a little bit of a break now, and we will be back with you shortly. Thank you, David. All right, brother. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And David and I have, as you know, just been discussing for the last hour all the different kind of elements of the work he's been doing and how he's kind of got to where he is now. And David, I think you had a thread that you wanted to continue with, so carry on, sir, as you were.
Well, we kind of got to a point there where we can now discuss the opposition, if you like, to what we're doing. Now, one of the major things is, of course, we've had a lot of trolls, and we've dealt with a lot of them, and they're still out there, and they just waste your time, and they don't bother looking at the evidence. So they're disregarding them. The reasonable questions we've had, and it wasn't our defeat; it was the defeat. It was a failure of the society to do the right thing. Is when Ollie Pinnock, a boxer from Southend, was arrested after following our process, and I was working with him tirelessly on that. And I had power of attorney for Ollie Pinnock when they arrested him for challenging the council tax. Now, the tabloid newspapers picked this one up, and they spun it as they always do. And I just want to make a couple of points. He never refused to pay council tax. He only ever asked if it was lawful for him to pay or legal, because, of course, the term legal, and this is another point I just want to quickly make, means something that is lawful. And the biggest lie we got out there today, or one of them, is that we've got a legal system. It's not legal at all. Anyway, going back to Ollie, he knew the risks. He wanted to take the challenge because it's the right thing to do. And so he did the process we advised with the council tax, knowing the situation and that, well, not the fact, it wasn't the fact at the time, but we suspected very much that they would not allow him to get away with it because it would open the floodgates, because everyone hates the council tax. It's a really bad, and they use it for civility more than anything. It's not so much the money. They want people to be in fear. You've got to break through the fear. But the fact is that Southend police committed treason, high treason, by taking Ollie Pinnock down to Southend police station. They wouldn't allow me access as I've travelled down there with power of attorney. They arrogantly said over the intercom, "We've got the power," and they shut the intercom off. So I said, "I have power of attorney. I want to see Ollie Pinnock." So what happened is he never refused to pay. He had the money sat by. He just put it in. He didn't put it in an escrow account because you can't do that these days, apparently. But he had the money sat there to pay it under duress of circumstances, which was always his option. So he knew what he was doing, and he's a very good guy. He's a very clever guy. He's had to take a little bit of a backseat after because he got a lot of hassle from his family, as did we actually. But we remained honourable with all that. He ended up paying under duress of circumstances. What they did was in Southend police station, they put him in front of a video camera, in front of a said court, and they wouldn't allow him to present any of his evidence, any of his defence, and they just gave him 25 days in prison to try and quell the dissent movement, really, and especially with council tax. So the whole group got behind him. He had the money anyway, but he'd spent a day in prison, in the police custody, and he wasn't prepared to go to prison, and we back him on that all the way. So he paid under duress of circumstances, and he did it under extreme duress. Now, so we all backed him. We all had a whip round and sent him some cash as well, just to thank him for at least going through that. He did get a lot of hassle from his family, and you can see why. I mean, he's got a couple of young kids and that, and his wife, she was supportive of him, but she was a bit, she was sad the way it had gone, really. And the rest of their family weren't very happy with us, but we explained it to them, and he has as well. So he did us a great service, because at that point we realised that that was my first loss, really. I class it as my first loss. I had a 100% success rate before then. But that's when it changed. That's when the system changed, or the regime changed. They were going to be prepared to commit high treason with evidence to prove it against us. So it changed for us. And since then, we've always stated to people, because we get a lot of people coming on trying to challenge the council tax, the thing we need to do is you can use the process up to a point where you will, for the sake of loss of liberty or loss or harm to yourself even, because the common law protects you this way, you can pay up under duress of circumstances. You must write them a notice of payment under duress, or put VC, which means in Latin vico actus, it's short for vico actus, which means under duress of circumstances. When you pay by check or signature or whatever, or if you pay in any way, you need to serve them with a notice of payment under duress of circumstances, because you're not admitting liability, you're not aiding and abetting high treason, you're being forced to do so. And there's a maxim in law that states, any act done by myself against my will is not my act. And so that gives you a claim against them eventually when we get the common law reasserted, and we must do, otherwise we lose everything, especially our sovereignty, which is everything. And that's when it changed for us. So with that and driving offences, because they hold all the cards with the driving, with the DVLA. Like I said, I tried it. If I had taken to the road, I would have only... What happened with me, with my truck, is they impounded my truck, they held it for ransom, and they put illegal retention orders and a lien on it as well. And of course, the officers that did it went on holiday. So I ended up losing my home, which was my home. I had to sofa surf for 5 weeks. Yeah. All my evidence was in there. And when they dragged me into the fake court, and I explained my situation to the magistrate, the alleged magistrate, they didn't even know what the situation is. You've got to have a bit of sympathy for magistrates, really. But the guy I'd spoken to 3 months previously was this same guy. So when I got in front of him, we had like a little rapport going on. And he asked me all the relevant questions about having no tax, having no insurance, because I didn't have insurance either. I was even challenging that, because I say we have national insurance. We don't need any other insurance. We have national insurance. You pay your national insurance. You're covered by the system of service that we should be enjoying, you see? So that was my argument with that one. However, I demanded leave. They tried to remand me in custody because I would not provide an address. But I pointed out to the opposition counsel that I was not allowed any of my documented evidence, which was down in the custody suite while I was in the fake court. And the magistrate was quite annoyed about that for a start. And I demanded leave. I didn't accept jurisdiction of the court, demanded leave. They invited me back, which I didn't go eventually anyway, but that's another little story, which I won't go into right now. And I got unconditional bail. So I could present my evidence, because they went off and said, well, every man has a right to have evidence for their defence. So we go out and leave, blah, 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 blah. So I played the game, if you like, under the free man way. At the time, you see, I didn't quite understand it all at that time. This is in 2011, okay, so, or 10, yeah. 10 and 11. And so we also say to people, don't deregister your car. I mean, there are certain places that you are stating that you can do this successfully, quite completely lawfully, but the fact is, you're going to get challenged at the side of the road by unaware not all ignorant, but some of them are, but, because ignorance is to ignore something, but they're unaware of the law because they haven't been taught law in the universities. Police officers who should be acting as constables under their warrant card don't even know what the law is. And their oath says they will act faithfully according to law. Now, law only refers to the laws of the people. The coronation oath proves it. The usurped ones. So we don't advise you do that because you're going to bring hassle onto yourself. They're going to probably arrest you, and they're going to hold your car.
Sorry, it's a quick interjection. I've seen the videos of people trying to present themselves in this light, and they're not pretty. Where get your sergeant down here. The sergeant comes, and they're like, "Right, you either get out, or we're going to smash the window." Yeah. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. No. It's not always ignorance. It is just unawareness a lot of the time. But some of them. That's
it. And this is what we're stating with the police. They're not all bad guys. And I've met cops that have said, you know what? Yeah, they sort of said, well, I support you, but what can I do? I've got a mortgage. I've got kids. If I go up against the system, I'm going to lose my job. I'm probably going to get, worse things happening. Yeah. Because we know what whistleblowers in the police have been hounded at, and they're doing it with politicians and other people. I think they're using the paedophile thing to trap people. Not only trap them, but just threaten them with it because they can download bloody pornography to your computer if they want to. Yeah, and they can then come and arrest you and accuse you of it, and then you're discredited. There's nowhere to get remedies. Eh?
This is it.
They own the courts. So we don't advise anyone do that either. There's certain battles that are worth fighting, especially the theft of our public services. Council tax is up to a point. Deregistration, I wouldn't even bother with trying because you're going to cause loss and harm to yourself, and I've proven that. I had to get out of my truck, otherwise they would have broken my window. So I got out.
I was just a quick one. Yeah, I was toying with the idea, and I was on license for quite a while, as anyone who knows about my situation. I did a couple of sentences for drug supply. My license has only recently expired. And I was toying with the idea of just buying a little banger, but put in the local chief of police on notice, my situation, get acknowledgement of the situation, because I'm pretty sure he has to acknowledge it, and then just recording it and being, let's go out on the road, be cool about it, At the end of the day, I'd say you do get some, I'll just say as I see it, arsehole police officers, but there are some good ones as well. So, there's same with anything. There's always bad apples in the group. But just to kind of, again, make a few videos, raise awareness, say this is what happens. And you might have to go through the process of being arrested, and it's not pleasant, but I've been through it a few times. But if it means being able to kind of raise awareness of the situation, but as you said, I think we need to choose our battles wisely. So I
would say that look, it's like when I say we can't go to their courts; it's illegal. The thing is, you can do anything under duress of circumstances, but you need to ground your process under Article 61, or at least treason evidence if you don't want to do the Magna Carta. The treason evidence, FCO 301048, as I mentioned earlier. And the Barron's petition, and we've got lots of treason evidence in the files. It's in abundance. The usurpation of the coronation oath, the Bill of Rights. It's all treason. So there's lots of evidence to go on. So I would say, pick your battles wisely. Don't do something that's likely to cause you a great deal of harm. I also want to say that there's certain things that are very dodgy. If you're in the family courts, they're going to ignore you, and they're probably going to come down harder on you if you use treason evidence against them, because they're under threat then more. And they're secret. They can do what they like. They can put denotices or whatever they call them now on the press. They can threaten you with imprisonment if you mention anything about the case. They've got that tied up. But if people start this process early on with the SS, who are the problem, they're a social service. Again, the clues are still there. You do not have to agree to their service. Now, and when they invoke, when they go through the schools, which is they do that as well if you won't do comply, you can take away from the school their presumption of loco parentis, or at least limit it. Loco parentis means basically, it's Latin. It means that the headmaster or the teachers have the rights of a parent when the child are in their care and protection.
Right.
Well, that's necessary up to a point, but not to the point where they can go and vaccinate them without you knowing, where they can bring in these social services without you knowing, and do other things like keep them in detention, lock them in these bloody rooms that they're doing at the moment.
I've seen that, yeah.
Okay, so you can take away the presumption. And this is what the fake courts work on. They all work on presumption. So in our notices, we remove the presumption. We give them no wiggle room. So we don't really mention contractual agreements or go into their rules and acts and statutes, because you're giving them more room to maneuver. I mean, they ignore the truth. If it's only about treason, if it's only about Article 61 and its invocation, there's no wiggle room for them. So they're more likely to run away from this, because if they don't, they're going to have to commit high treason. So that's an option that you give the agent, and that's why I've had successes in the past against a so-called district judge and HMRC and everyone else. So those points, I think, are important to make. Pick your battles wisely, folks. You know, if you're going to do this, know what the limits, know where you... The thing is, you can do it for any process, and the get-out clause is, you can pay up under duress. You need to let them know that. This payment is made under duress. I'm coming to this court hearing under duress because the police have threatened to kick my door in and whatever. Okay, so under duress, it's fine. But you can never grant the fake court, any jurisdiction. You cannot, because they have none. They are a corporate. I mean, you can look on Dun & Bradstreet, Companies House, and Companies Check is probably the best one at the moment, to see that your local magistrates or court or crown courts, fake courts, I always have to say that, are corporate businesses. Now, that's illegal anyway. They are supposed to be run as services under Magna Carta and, you know, the rest of our rights under law. Also, with Magna Carta Article 40, it states that to no one shall we sell, to no one shall we delay or deny right to justice. So when you're taking out these pointless and stupid private prosecutions against them in their fake courts, and you're having to pay through the nose for it, that's also illegal. And you're operating according to doublethink at that point, because they're not bloody courts. And let's get back to the real point here, the real truth of the matter. They are private corporate businesses using treasonous legislation against us and deceiving us under this bloody Admiralty trust thing, which is under the SESKB trust or Act, deceiving us, and people are complying under illusions of all this, and they, you know, this is where they get you. So we remove the presumptions by what we do, and it's keep it very, very simple. And this is the thing: when you realise the complexity of all this, once you've got all that locked down, the whole thing does seem very simple when you boil it all down to the basics, and it is. And that's the thing with common law; it's very simple. It was created for the imbecile to be able to understand. So it's not really rocket science; it's just observing truth. So. Yeah.
I think obfuscation is that the word?
Obfuscate, subjugate. Yeah. I mean, we're
one of their fortes, the old obfuscation of all the information. But yeah, we're unraveling it all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What are you saying? Go on.
So this is a very long-term agenda, and you know we've got to look at this from a long way back. And when we look at it from 1688, for instance, but obviously a lot nearer, we'll take it back to 72 with peace treason, but also, I was going to say there. Sorry, I got a bit brain fog.
That's all right. I'm sure it'll come back.
My point. I was going to make an important point.
We were talking about.
No, I get it. I remember. We need to take it back to a basic point of reference, really. And I think when we're talking about treason, we have to go back to 1688, really. The occupation of the crown and that. But when it comes to this immediate treason, it's the 72 Act, which the so-called imposters in Westminster are saying that they've repealed now, which is misdirection again, because they've got no, you know, they're not even a government. They're a load of treasonous imposters, and they were appointed. And people think that we voted these people into service. Well, we didn't. The voting frauds have been well known over every general election, and we well know that the police take the complaints and they sit on them for 6 months until everyone's forgot, and then they don't investigate anything. So these politicians have mainly been appointed by the Bilderberger Group. Now, Jeremy Hunt went to the last Bilderberger Group meeting, I think it was this year, and I think it must have been this year because it was recent, I believe. So Boris Johnson taking control at the moment. I think you're going to find he's going to mess it up in a big way. So he's unelectable until Jeremy Hunt gets in again.
Do you not have any confidence in Boris?
No, I don't. I'm afraid I don't because I'm afraid I don't because he's ignoring the fact that it's treason. It's very well evidenced. It's not as if we kept it quiet. He's just controlled opposition like they all are. You know, and people that supported UKIP, well, they accepted members, you know, entering into the European Parliament. That was treason again. And, you know, I went after UKIP myself. I've been after the Green Party, Caroline Lucas as well. We've been after them all, you know, and they all run away from the word, the T word, as we call it, treason, as everyone else seems to, which is the frustrating bit, which is why our movement hasn't grown like it should have done by now. Because every other lawful rebellion, and the thing is with the lawful rebellion movement, we're not rebels, okay? And I need to explain why. Because a rebel, if you look in the dictionary or whatever, the English dictionary, not Black's rule book, okay, and they're not laws.
A few times.
Yeah. If you look in the dictionary, a rebel is someone who acts against the authority of a nation or state or country. Whereas what we're doing is acting against, by law, by royal command, in fact, against the lack of authority. So we call ourselves dissenters, constitutional protectors, whatever you like, but we're not rebels. And I would argue against people saying that the government are rebels. They're treasonous imposters. They're not rebels. They're disgusting individuals, quite frankly, that are misdirecting everybody by using social engineering and programs. And, you know, Google's using algorithms and stuff now to keep people stressed. I mean, when you go on to try and find a decent copy of Magna Carta, for instance, you've got to struggle to find it. It took me ages to find a proper good one, and then we've got it in the files. It's on a PDF, so you get the Latin words, and then you get it translated, and then you get comments about it, which is very good to people to learn it, to read up on. But what I'm saying is that they're hiding this information. You know, they're hiding this stuff. They want you to think that we don't have a written constitution, and one that isn't codified. Well, we have a written constitution. It's Magna Carta and the Coronation Oath. Those are the principal constitutional documents created by the people versus the Crown, or with the people and the Crown, rather than Parliament getting involved. So we have a written constitution, and it's also codified. They say a lot of people like to state that codification is like or codified constitution is like the American one, all put into one document. Well, our constitution was built up, it's been reasserted, the common law has been reasserted time and time again. Magna Carta has been reasserted with the Coronation Oaths, basically, until more recently, 1688. But we have a codified constitution because when the constitution is applied in full, it provides a system of protocols that need to be followed for it to work properly. So a codified means a system of protocols, really. And you can look it up. It's what it says in the dictionary, you know. So it doesn't mean it doesn't need to be in one document. And ours can't be, really, unless I guess we could, under constitutional convention, we could put it all into one document, but no need to. It's got history behind it. It's well established. You know, it's become customary, and that's another thing Parliament cannot touch is customs. They can't touch maxims either, although they created a few illegal maxims, like let those that will be deceived be deceived. I mean, they use that to its maximum.
Oh, sure they do. Yes.
Well, they do, because they usurp the real meaning, the spirit of it, what it was created for, I believe, which was...
Darrell Bickler talks about that in terms of mirrored, kind of transferred epithets, I think was the word.
I think I get your point, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll refer back to Darrell again. Interesting stuff, and very similar. He's on his own different field, but...
Right.
It's exactly
the same. Come together and learn each other's understandings, because we're only going to grow together with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what that actually means, that maxim is, if someone knows they're being deceived, well, they deserve it, but they use it in a different way. Anyway, so the opposition. One is, why are we so small? Well, we've got a lot of opposition. All the other lawful rebellion groups out there, apart from us, and the Common Law Canadians, which is a spin-off of our group, and we're trying to get the Australians to do a very similar one. We can bring more cohesion under the Commonwealth. We provide the evidence and all the truth. We don't provide any doublethink, although we have been guilty of it before, as I've said, unaware. We don't provide anything that isn't basically simple to research for yourself, and it doesn't take a genius to do it, because the government still have the Bill of Rights on their books. They still have these documents there, so you can verify them and see for yourself what they actually say. We've just made it simple.
Yeah.
The other opposition, well, like I say, all the freeman groups, the lawful rebellion groups, are misdirecting people in certain ways, giving half truths, really. We've got the Dragons that a lot of them have come on board with us now, mind you. So they were misdirected by Graham Moore, really. But what he's doing now is he's supporting Robin Tilbrook. What he's trying to do is to bring a case against, saying that we left the European Union in the 29th of March, when we were never in it in the first place for a start. And he's trying to do it in their fake corporate courts. Right. So you're not going to get remedy, and it's total misdirection, you see. Also, I had a radio show on the Ollie Connolly Daily Brexit show, and he just spat out his dummy on when I explained the doublethink, because to ask the criminal government to do a judicial review on whether we have the right to bear arms isn't really what we want to think about anyway, but we do have. It's clearly provided under the law anyway, or whether the 72 European Union Act was legal. It's no good asking the criminals and asking them to do a judicial review on it when they're not even part of the judiciary. They're a corporate entity. It's doublethink, and he didn't like any of that. So I tried to get unity with the Dragons because they were speaking the right stuff to start with, and unfortunately we didn't get there. There's other groups out there. A lot of people have associated our group with the Common Law Court, and I don't want to put Common Law Court down particularly, because they are getting a lot of people very interested on how the common law is supposed to work in the courts, because they convene in their own common law courts, which we all can all do.
Yeah.
But they are the people's courts, after all. But the trouble with it is they cannot enforce the orders of the courts. They can't enforce the decisions of the jury. But I still took my council tax, because I took the council tax on after the Ollie Pinnock fiasco, as I would call it, or treason, because I have no choice under my oath of office, my oath of allegiance, but to stand by the truth. So I served over 30 notices on everybody concerned. The regime went after me heavily. The council, the universal credits scam, completely destroyed my financial situation. The council hit me suddenly with a £1,000 council tax bill, and I ended up homeless, and they have a warrant out for my arrest today, but I'm sure they could find me if they really wanted to, but I'm not going down easily, and they freaking well know it. And so they've impoverished me by standing up against the regime. And this is the trouble now. We don't want to get people into trouble. We want people to stand by the law and to assert themselves, but not to do it to their own detriment.
Yeah.
But we need to grow as a movement, because the Facebook group page, for a start, they've messed with our membership level numbers, because we added 200 the other day. Well, I've added 400 in one go in the past, and we've had like 50 members. Now, I know there are some cases where people may not have joined or may have left because they didn't want to be in the group, but they're messing with our numbers. And there's a lot more people standing in Lawful Dissent outside of Facebook, you know.
Yeah.
Caroline Stevens did an interview with the only Baron that's actually come forward, which is Lord Craigmile. He's a nice guy, but a bit dim, to be fair. Sorry, Lord Craigmile, I think you're a decent guy, and at least you did an interview with Caroline to explain the position of the Barons. We have to understand that the Barons, after they invoked Article 61, were kicked out of the House of Lords by the impostors that remained there. No doubt they would have been hounded in other ways, perhaps financially, perhaps threats. We don't know. That's hearsay.
Yeah.
But you can't also expect the generals to enter the battlefield before the armies arrived. So what we've done is, because they've gone AWOL, and they didn't frankly even know what they were doing, I don't think, really, to be honest. But we had to take control of the movement. The direction they gave us at the time was that they invoked Article 61, and it says what we have to do in there by law. We have to compel other people to stand. This is why it was created, to create unity amongst the people. So anyone not standing on Article 61, it's not my opinion, this is just the law, are acting in outlawry at this time. They're outside of the law. And I'm sorry if that upsets anyone, but that's just the truth. It's not my opinion in law, okay? That's what the law says. And if anyone who denies the common law and the people's law, which protects our sovereignty, protects us from tyranny, then you really need your head looked at, mate, because, you know, you're not doing anyone a service. You're only helping the perverts in government remain there. And, you know, I'm quite blunt with this with people, and I have been over the years. I'm quite well known for it, to be quite honest. But we've got to cut through the BS, mate. We've got to get to the point where we can actually exact a remedy. You know, we can bring it about. So the Common Law Court have been doing things a little bit differently to us. I did get, if you like, remedy under their process, which is the correct process. That we did against the council tax. The council official was summoned and didn't appear. I provided my evidence to the jurors. They decided that treason had been committed, and so the verdict was in my favour, and we left it at that. But what I wanted to do was to just get the documents, get the process that have actually been to a proper court of law, public convened court of law, and it's been verified by the people that what you're doing is criminal. So it's added weight to my process, added weight to my evidence. Some people are saying, well, look, it's a biased court because everyone's there. It's because they don't like the government and they're in rebellion or dissent or whatever. It's not quite the truth. They have to follow a process. They have to follow the truth, the evidence. Now, if the opposition, the defence don't appear and present an evidence, then they get found guilty in their absence. Like, you know, that's how it. We've got no way of enforcing. You know, we can't send the police around to get them to the bloody court, can we? And this is the problem with the common law court. It's not enforceable. I support it for the one reason that it's making people aware how the courts work. But I was a bit unhappy with the main spokesman, who isn't the common law court. He's just been a spokesman in certain areas of court process and stuff, which is John Smith. He's a very nice guy. He's got good intentions. Unfortunately, he has not been a benefit to the movement because he, at one point on the Caroline Stevens radio show or interview, stated that, you know, Magna Carta was not really, you know, it's more for the barons and the people, when it evidently is not. You know, it's for everyone. It's not for anyone in particular, and it's not just for men; it's for women too. Although back in the feudal days, the women didn't have rights as jurors, to be fair, but they do today. This has changed. We were in a different time zone then. But anyway, so they did that, and he also came out and stated, well, they've agreed that there's two jurisdictions, the common law and their admiralty fake rules rather than law, which is a mistake and doublethink as well, because they don't have jurisdiction. If you look up the word jurisdiction, it means unable to enact law, basically, authorized to act according to law, to preside over law. I can't remember the actual wording, but you can check it out for yourself. That's what it states. So they don't have any jurisdiction. And I didn't want it to, I supported the common law courts on conditions that we don't end up with their courts and our courts, because it's missing the point. We have to unite together. And it's a catch-22 thing, really, as I understand. We need to get the people first, but we can't have it so that it's their courts and our courts, because they're not courts. They're running as corporate, and it's quite obvious they are. So
when you can see, you can actually all make sense running under maritime.
Yeah.
The way it's all dock and all the rest of it, yeah.
Yeah, and the last thing I would like to state, and I'm a bit annoyed about, really, because through a third party, and I'd sent emails to John about the Lynn Fire matter. What they should have done, him and Ian Crane, outside of the so-called Royal Courts of Justice, well, they should have explained we're outside the so-called Royal Courts of Justice, which is actually a corporate hearing, unauthorised, because the Crown was usurped in 1688. You can look at all this, blah, blah, blah. We're talking to the alleged Judge Supperstone, who's not a judge. He's a corporate employee, acting as some kind of trustee under the SKB Act, and committing high treason. Because if they had gone after those fake judges for the fact that EU arrest warrants are high treason in our country to act against anybody in our land, like they did with Moore Dibb, John Anthony Hill, with the 7/7 ripple effect, and I'd like to go into that, actually, because that's a very important thing to go into. If they'd have done that, they'd have had the backing of our group. We'd have been down there with them, because we need to focus on treason, because there's no remedy against any of this fracking, the child thefts, the frauds and everything, without dealing with the treason first.
Yeah.
If you deal with that, sorry?
Get to the root of the problem.
That's exactly it. Now we will all benefit. All of us will benefit from proper courts of law, because we'll stop 5G. I've been trying to get Mark Steele to understand this, and I think Mark Steele. Well, I'm on the fence with Mark, because I've said, look, you can unite with our group. We've got county groups on Practical Lawful Dissent, so you can join the county groups, and then you can convene together in your local areas, together on the ground, live groups. Create little live groups where you can discuss things and help each other sign documents, and to address the council like we did in Glastonbury and the police. You can work together. We need to sort of get on the ground, because they could shut the internet down anytime they want to.
Exactly.
So
we have a little meet up here in Swindon, David. Every second and fourth Thursday is the rabbit hole, and there's the Mind Body Spirit group. I think I'm sure it's every other. And as you say, it's good to get out on the ground, out from behind the computer screens, because whilst this is, when used for the right purposes, technology can be fantastic.
It can be. So I've offered this to Mark Steele with his 5G group, because it benefits us, because it gets more people standing under Article 61. And then they've got some much better protection against the system by using that treason evidence in Article 61. And they can use our county groups to get more people on the ground, educating other people about 5G. We don't mind that. We want them to educate about 5G and the treasonous system, the fact that there's no courts. So it runs in together. It creates unity. This is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We've also been trying to do this with the Common Law Court, but with the Lynn Fire thing, with the way they went about it, because unfortunately the jury, or I wasn't at the process, but the evidence they used against extradition orders from the EU being criminal were United Nations declarations on human rights charters. They didn't include anything of the Constitution. And I think at this point I should mention that we are being put now under the United Nations authority. The Charter of the Commonwealth, which you can see in the files, I think we've got it, we must have it in the files, I can't remember if you can put it in there, but you can Google it online, has been created now as a United Nations partnership. The Queen, the usurped Queen, agreed this, and probably under duress, we don't know any of that, but also Britain or England, because people don't like the term Britain, England, the English Isles, if you like, and Canada and New Zealand have signed up to the UN's Global Immigration Compact, which basically makes all immigrants sovereign in the country. What it does is it usurps our sovereignty under the United Nations. Again, it's treason, and this is happening behind everyone's backs while they're focused on the EU and Brexit. So we need to wake up and see how these people misdirect us, and they're still putting us under a treasonous or alleged authority, because the United Nations is a very bad institution. You've only got to read the Earth Summit created, the Agenda 21 book, which is out on Amazon. You can just pick it and read it. It's quite a big book. You can see what their intentions are for us, and they're doing it. Every council in our land has a sustainable development agenda run by Common Purpose. This is where they've really got into the nitty-gritty of our society and directing even the police and everyone else. The police are basically under EU control, and the bringing in the European Army and PESCO, which is Permanent Structured Cooperation, which was agreed to by that treason May. Again, it's high treason, because without a standing army, a standing army is illegal without proper war. Times of war, but without a national army or a military force, we cannot be sovereign. We cannot defend our land from anyone else. So that's still going on behind our backs as well. When we allegedly leave the EU, which is what can't happen, I expect Johnson will create some kind of deal. The evidence to this is okay. Look at this evidence. In the November 2018. November the 14th, 2018, Brexit proposal deal by May, it says in Article 171 that even after we leave the EU, European courts of human justice will hold precedent over our courts. So we weren't going to leave the EU under that false premise, that false document. And I suspect the same will occur with Boris Johnson. Or he will just become unelectable and they'll decide it on the general election, which is illegal again. You can't vote in a system of a treasonous administration because you grant it legitimacy by doing so.
It's a big old game of chess, David, isn't it? And I don't play chess. I'm the Scrabble master.
Yeah.
I'm the Scrabble master, yeah.
I used to play a mean game of chess. I haven't picked it up for years, but
I'm not a chess player. I didn't get into the chess, but obviously I understand the principles. And as we say, this has been going on for a long time. And there are always multiple moves ahead. So as you say, there's all this distraction with Brexit and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned Caroline Stevens a couple of times. I'll be speaking with Caroline tomorrow. And like everyone has just come. What I would like is just for everyone to come from their own angle, and as I said, it all comes together, and we'll iron out the creases and we'll iron out the rough edges of what the miscommunications and the misinformation and the disinformation, because we are up against it. But as long as we have that kind of unity, as you keep saying, which I'm very much resonating with, it's not about division, it's about breaking down them divisions. And yes, there are going to be grey areas in the middle that we need to kind of shine the light on. Yeah, exactly. People make mistakes. And
John Smith is
people willing to own the mistakes and say, do you know what, I was wrong about that one, which I always am. As I say, every day is school day, and always happy.
I'd like our movement to be able to unite under the common law court, because the process is fine. It's just the application of it that they're doing is perhaps a little naive, okay, to be fair. Because obviously, I would say that Lynn Thayer would less likely, is the only way I can say it, because I don't know for sure, to have been extradited. We'd had those fake judges on notice of high treason if they agreed to it. Because you know, we would have had a lot more people behind us on this. And I would have been happy to go and arrest them myself. You know, I mean, these people are committing these disgusting crimes. And poor Lynn, you know, she's in the south of France somewhere, possibly for 2 years, before she comes up against another extremely corrupt system. The French judicial system is probably one of the worst in the world, actually. But, you know, ours is pretty close to it. You know, a poor Lynn.
People, sorry, David, but people hail the British legal system as, you know, the pinnacle. Anyone who thinks the system the system works clearly hasn't been a victim of it in one way or another. No, I know we all are victims of it. I mean, on that personal basis, and it takes that sometimes, that personal experience of a gentleman who was always of the, yes, you know, British law, British justice, British court system, until he became a victim of it, and I fell foul of it quite nastily.
Yeah.
And he then realised, and he said, yeah, like, I was just living under an illusion, and that's where a lot of people are at, and we've all been there, and we're all coming out of it one extent to another. It's just a spectrum. I don't like this term woke. It's, you know, that just causes division again, and it's a bit of ego getting in there as well. You know, I think of it as an awakening. We're all awakening to one degree or another, and we're all kind of hand-holding, if you like, and just, you know, showing each other the way.
We want, like I'm saying, we want to align with the common law. We can set our own common law court. John is not the common law court. He's just a spokesman for it in what he's done, but we can't do it under the present circumstances while they're not focused on treason, you know, because they're holding a meeting, I think it's just the other day they held a meeting in London shouting about cancer. Well, that's an arm. That's like a branch of the
tentacle, if you will.
It's a tentacle of the heart of the matter, which is always going to be treason. And until we deal with that, we won't have common law. We won't have courts of law. No one can get justice. So we're just all batting again on a sticky wicket, you see.
Yes.
We get rid of the core issue, and we can only do it united together. Now, I've got a proposed strategy for remedy. I might have mentioned it earlier in the files, which is how I would. It's my proposal, really, and the group generally. Well, no one's had any opposition to it. I haven't had any opposition to it. Agree, because it's an honourable, peaceful, yet assertive process. And if it's done correctly, we'll have everything in place to make it very difficult, because it's always going to come to the police in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult for the police to go, you know what, we're going to just ignore you 3 million people, because we need about 3 million people really to get.
Am I right in thinking, David? Just quickly, am I right in thinking that? Well, I think I am. From what I know, is that if violence erupts on a large scale to the point of a national emergency, then the police will kind of be stood down, and it'll be, as you say, there's the European army kind of situation. Because the problem with that is, as you said, I bring it up because of what you just said there, about essentially, if there's enough of us, and you say the police are there, and you're putting the point across, it gets to a point where they have to go, oh, hang on a minute. And this is where we've seen this around the world, where you have police forces laying down their weapons, and uniting with the people. The problem is, if you have an indoctrinated army force who doesn't even speak the same language, you don't even have that opportunity to appeal. It's just, and that's a thought that and again, we don't want to get into the fear porn or any of that kind of jazz.
No.
It is a point that's worth raising to kind of say, look, this is where it's going. This is what they've got in place and in plan ready for us. So don't fall into these traps.
Well,
you know?
Where's the best place to talk to the police? It's not going to be on the streets with them trying to keep you back and kittling you and stuff. It's going to be at the police stations, and we know there are good cops in there, and it only takes one or two in each police station to go, yeah, sorry, we're not going to support these perverts. All we're asking the police to do is simply this: observe the evidence truth.
Yes.
Observe the treason. Here's the evidence. All we want you to do is observe that annual warrant card, you know, your oath of office. Be honest. That's all we're asking. And if you can't be honest, well, we're going to have to shut you down before you can attack us.
Yes.
I mean, we can arrest. We've got more power of arrest over the police than they have, actually, according to law. And if there's enough of us, now what we want is silent witnesses. That's all we want. We don't want. Have you seen the Birkenhead so-called rebellion?
I have not.
Okay, well that's on video, and it was a rabble. I was there, but it was We didn't know what we were walking into. We were just asked. When I was a freeman on the land, operating as a freeman, we went down to support it, and I won't go into it, but it became a bit of a rabble. It wasn't very well organised, and people went to prison. People didn't stand by the law fully, and it was a bit of a disappointment. But we don't want that again. What we want is 2 spokespersons at each venue, and I suggest the 45 police headquarters in the land, to act as the spokesman for all the silent witnesses that will come out. You can wear your yellow vest, that's fine. Just bring your cameras, just record everything.
That's it, live stream everything.
Yeah, and if anything gets untoward, if there's violence anywhere, we will have also enforcers, and I'd like to get them properly verified as common law constables under the common law. We can convene our own common law to do that anyway, common law court. But I'd like to get them. We need probably 20 at each venue, because if the 2 people doing the spokespeople for the people outside can't get through to the police with their honourable and reasonable requests, come on guys, all we want you to do is observe the truth, that's all. They can't get through to them, and we may have to bring in the enforcers to put a bit more pressure on them. I mean, if we surround the police stations and we only let out the blues and twos, we can't prevent emergency services, obviously. We've got to be very careful what we do here, because we can't stop people that are in trouble needing the police help. So we would have to let out blues and twos, but basically anyone else that comes out or tries to get in, we can just arrest them. If there's enough of us, we can just do it, even if they've got riot shields. I mean, if we have the right to self-defense. If they create violence, we have the right to self-defense, but we don't want to get it to that point. And I don't think it would get to that point.
There's no need to, is there? There's no need to.
I think there's enough good guys in there that would actually say, you know what, I'm sick of supporting this bloody system anyway.
Yeah.
These perverts, they hide all this bloody paedophile evidence against themselves, and they focus on the people like Epstein, who, allegedly committed suicide. Well, he's probably down in some South American country now. There's witnesses at the prison that say he was taken out by military escort, but I don't know any. That's hearsay. I have to say, people. Yeah. But this is how the game is being played. They're getting rid of people like that. You'll probably see a threat come against Tony Blair, because everyone hates him. And we've got a lot of evidence against Tony Blair. He committed at least 4 counts of high treason. He also committed terrorism. And I'd like to just bring in this point of John Anthony Hill's process with the 7/7 ripple effect. The reason being, they went after John Anthony Hill for trying to prove that the extra Muslim guys that they were trying to fit up for aiding the alleged bombers in London, which weren't even, you've got to look at what's ripple effect to see this. But
is that a YouTube video, David?
Say again?
Is that a YouTube video you're referring to?
It's a YouTube video, 7/7 Ripple Effect 2. That's the one.
I'll put the link in the description.
He's done a third. So have a look at it. And also Richard D. Hall. He did an interview with Noor Dib. And that's a very good interview. He explains what happened. So that's really worth. There's 3 videos of Noor Dib explaining what happened, what he tried to do, and what they did against him. He ended up with 150 days in prison. They extradited him. They extradited him from Ireland with a EU arrest warrant. This is in 2011? No, I can't remember the date. Sorry, the year.
That's all right. Not important.
But because all he did was he sent his evidence to a jury in England to help these Muslim guys who they were trying to fit up, because they'd shot the other patsies at Canary Wharf. They weren't blown up in trains. The explosions in the trains came up from the ground underneath the trains. It's all evidence.
Okay.
So it was C4, and that's why John de Menzies was murdered, because the first thing they said on the 7/7 London bombings was there had been an electrical surge on the underground, if you remember. Well, there was an electrical surge. John de Menzies was an electrician, and that electrical surge, I suggest, set off the C4 explosives.
Right.
And if you look into this in a lot of depth, because there was an exercise running at the very same time, involving the very same circumstances, by advisor consultants. And the guy running that, Peter Power, he's a bloody terrorist. And it's all evidence. The point I wanted to make with that, sorry, I diversed, was that the jury heard the evidence and they pronounced John Anthony Hill not guilty on that evidence. But that, by default, said that they, by a verdict of 10-2, stated that the government were guilty of terrorism. So you can also add that evidence into your process with the Lawful Dissent movement, or you cannot aid and abet terrorism, as well as you can't aid and abet treason. You can't aid and abet the BBC. So your TV license, here's a good one for TV license. On 9/11, the BBC did a live news report stating that Building 7, the Solomon building, had fallen 20 odd minutes, 25 minutes before it fell. And that proves that the BBC were complicit with that crime. They wouldn't have known it was going to fall because it was a surprise to everybody. Most people don't even realise that 3 buildings fell that day. They just see the Twin Towers. That was it.
Yeah.
So if you want to get off your TV license, just refer to the video, and it's on YouTube. But still,
there we go.
And Maud Deeb also, John Anthony Hill also refers to it. Send a link to that and say, well, I can't support terrorism, so I'm not paying TV license. You can bugger off. You know?
Yeah.
I've used it, and they sent a letter back saying, not going to investigate you for 2 more years.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never paid for a TV license ever. Got wise of that little scam back in the early days. But as you say, people are afraid because they use these threatening letters and these intimidating adverts and stuff, and and also the tactics that they use. Someone personally to me recently, let them in. I'm like, why did you let them in once they're in? And then these guys, they're some of them nasty bully type characters, and that's how they make their living. But yes, I was just going to say that we've kind of covered a lot of ground there, David. This has been pretty fantastic. I really do appreciate you bringing the information to the table for us. And
thank you for letting me.
No, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to ask, was there anything before we round off that you wanted to kind of skip back around to? Are there any kind of points you wanted to bring up in summary?
Oh, I could probably go on about loads.
I bet you could. I bet you could. We could. We'll continue with this, sir. We'll do another video in the near future. But just for this one,
I would like people to ask questions that they're not sure about, and I don't mind answering. I don't know it all. I'm no expert. Okay.
Yeah.
I've learned this from using the process in a practical way, and I've made some mistakes, and so I've learned the hard way sometimes. I mean, I'm suffering now a bit, really, because of the way the system is. I don't get any money from the state or at all now, and they cut my money off. I don't want that to deter people. It's just that I've been quite a threat to them for a long time. And
You're very vocal.
Yeah, they want to put me in prison in a star chamber. Well, I'll probably end up getting suicided. No, I just want to
suicide all of us, though, David, can they? And that's the whole point.
They can't, but I just want
to suicide us all, so let's all get together now, get this information.
Yeah, together we're powerful.
Too many grass fires everywhere now for them to put out, it's just,
Are we coming towards the end of the time? Because I just wanted to mention one other group.
You can mention as much as you like, but we'll kind of come towards rounding it off now.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we've attempted to help the veterans with this information because they're being summoned to private corporate hearings in Ireland for crimes that are... I'm not even going to debate the crimes because there was a lot of things that people don't know about Northern Ireland. There's a lot of things being misdirected, as it always does with the media. But the fact is, if they're to be tried, they need to be tried by a properly convened court of law, where the truth is open to be, not by some tribunal, by judges in a fake corporate hearing. Because what they're trying to do is incite riot. They're trying to incite civil unrest because then they can bring down more restrictions on us, as you pointed out. So we've got a bit of opposition with the veterans. They're saying, oh, it's all rubbish and they're not listening. But I've actually done a talk with some very interesting guys that were very interested. I did a 2-hour talk with some of the veterans. So at least we've tried. They can use our process against these fake courts and the only thing they can do is to commit treason to go after them. Now, I just want to say again, to stamp that point, we don't know what happened in Ireland. We don't know that the IRA were actually in conjunction with the present government in certain ways, and we don't know that things happened that they were also instructed under a treasonous regime. So they're not. It's not like the Nuremberg trials where they were responsible for all their actions. Even not that all their actions were as bad as what people are making out of. Because if you hand a gun to a child and you're in a war zone, you're going to shoot first and ask questions later. And if that gun goes missing, well, where's the evidence that you didn't just blatantly shoot a kid on the street? Well, there's none, is there? So this is the sort of thing that has occurred, I understand, and I don't have any. I have to say this is hearsay because I think these things need to be heard in a court of law, not by some criminal judges that want to incite riot in our country to bring down martial law or whatever it is they want, or the Eurogen 4 Rapid Reaction Force, or the United Nations so-called Peace Force onto the streets of Britain. We've got to be very aware not to play that game. And I want the veterans to understand this point, and I'm going to be posting this video out. I think it's a very important point that we want to support them as well. We just want them to get justice, that's all, Whether they committed crimes or not, I want them to get justice. So I think we might have maybe I've wrapped it up there. I don't know.
Well, that's a nice one to wrap it up there. Thank you, David. Yeah, we've got Chris Thrall, episode 5, ex-Royal Marine Commando, who obviously has a lot of support from veterans and whatnot. So hopefully some will filter over. And as you say, we're all about unity. That's all we're about.
Well, that's what we're about now. Yeah.
Yeah, breaking down these divisions and just bringing it all out.
Well,
not everyone's going to agree with everything. That's absolutely fine. No one has to agree with everything. But we're trying to bring it all to a common understanding. And by bringing it all out on the table, that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. Light, dark, good, bad, however, you just get it all out there.
I also want to emphasise that I don't mean to create division between ourselves and the common law court. I just have to stand by the truth, and I have to explain this publicly, so that they understand where they may be making some mistakes. And that's all I want to say. Together we can enforce the law, and it's a catch-22. I understand we need to get more people in, but we can't get them in and then misdirect them, because we're not going to get unity there. Because according to my oath of allegiance to the Constitution via the barons, the useless barons, quite honestly, prevents me from aiding and abetting any court that is not using the constitutional law. You see, so the Lynn Thayer thing is really prominent for me. It's angered me quite a lot, because all they had to do is do it by the treason evidence, and it is very, very evidential. I've got a little file in the files, 3 points, constitutional law points of why the extradition orders of the EU are illegal. If he'd have added them at least and used the United Nations declarations under duress, I can understand it, but he didn't, and so I was, I don't want to create division. We want unity.
No, I know.
I want to align with the common law court, so we can all be seen as one movement, not divided. And like John Smith isn't the common law court; he's just a spokesman. We can convene our own common law courts and bring action justice to our same. But I'd like to create the unity, and so I apologise if I've created any more division there. I don't mean to do so.
No, I think it's pretty self-evident, pretty clear that you're not trying to cause division here.
Thank
David.
you.
That comes across quite well. No, my pleasure. Thank you again, David. There's been a lot of interesting information and probably a lot to absorb for a lot of people. And like I said, I'll probably give this another couple of watches as well before it goes live. Can I ask, so I'm going to put all the links we've mentioned in the description box.
Right.
I just want to say them again. So the website.
Okay. Well, our sister, our Canadian group is the Canadian, the Common Law Canadians, and Jackie Phoenix is running that as well, as we're helping with her admin as well. And she's doing an awful lot of good work. They're still learning this stuff, so you have to be a little bit patient with them. I try to interact as much as I can, but I'm quite busy. I've also created a MeWe account so I can get all the documents uploaded onto there as well in case Facebook shuts us down.
I think I'll be duplicating everything on MeWe and BitChute as well.
Right.
case.
I can't do it all. I'm hoping
of course, I understand. Yeah.
Other people can do the same thing as me. This is the thing. Over the years, people have often looked to me to do stuff, and I just can't do it all. You know, guys, we're all sovereign. We've all got a duty to do this stuff. You can share anything I've ever created. There's no copyright. It's all free. You know. And so the other groups are denouncingdeception.co.uk, which is our we need to upload the latest edition of the layman's guide and get a couple of other things sorted out there. The guy's a bit busy who's running this site, but that's very good. The New Chartist movement, and the British Constitution group. Now, fantastic. If we can align with, the 5G movement, that would be great as well, because we see that as.
I can't see any reason that that can't be a thing, but all in good time. I'd say we're at a bit of a crossroads now, so the sooner we can get it all out there, all the information out there, and in the days on it, excuse me, everyone's an individual. So within these groups, whether there's hundreds of thousands, everyone's an individual. Everyone can just consume the information and make their own mind up. And hopefully, I'll be able to put out more and more and more, information and knowledge and research and stuff. And as I say, everyone on their own individual journey can come to their own individual conclusion.
That's what it's about, being sovereign on your own individual journey. Saying, don't believe anything I've told you. Come and have a look. Research it. Well, we've done all the hard work. You can easily research it. So, thanks.
Fantastic. That's a lovely mention to round it off there. Thank you, David. I really appreciate it. I'll speak to you again in the future.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. You take care then.
Thank you very much, brother. Take care. All the best.
Bye now.